Sup, Holmes?
Beware your host, Jonathan Holmes!
Thanks, Sinistar. As always, I appreciate it. And Alex Austin of Cryptic Sea, one of the first indie game developers whom I ever took great interest in with Gish so many years ago now. Finally, on Sup Holmes. What a delight. Thank you for being on.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah, that's kind of you to say. Right now, the project you're working on, from what I know, is Sub Rosa, which is quite different than what people who have heard your name before may know about. People in passing who are kind of familiar with the Alex Austin Cryptic Sea lineage. Sub Rosa, a whole new thing. That's how it seems to me, anyway.
Actually, it's not new. Like the first game I ever worked on was an FPS, actually.
Really?
And this was back before Quake 1, actually. Like I remember, the Q test. You remember Q test?
No,
the Quake test thing.
Yeah. Coming back to me a little bit.
It was actually on Wednesday. Was like the 20th anniversary of that. It was like this. I think it's multiplayer only test of Quake. Just I guess to test out the rendering and stuff like that. And that came out 20 years ago Wednesday. And I remember that for me was like, that was a big moment because I had been working on my own game, my own FPS, and it wasn't quite as good as the Quake engine, surprisingly. But yeah, just playing that and like seeing the potential of first person games, that was one of those big moments for me in gaming.
So when Q-Test first came out, you were already working on your own games. How long before that had you been working on game development?
That was about a year. Like I had when I was growing up, I did some Atari 800 games, at school and stuff, like in BASIC. And I remember back then I would always start with the title menu and basically not make it past that. Which I was thinking is ironic because now it's like my title menus are like the most basic things in the world. They're all just like black with the title of the game and like a start and exit button. But so yeah, I like it was after high school when I really started programming a lot, and using learning C and stuff like that. And so I mean, I actually wrote a 3D engine before GPUs, so like doing software rasterizing and stuff like that, doing assembly language, and so
whoa,
been at it for a long time.
Who taught you how to do all that stuff?
Just from books. One of the main ones was this guy Michael Abrash. He actually worked on Quake 1. And so he wrote a book that was really interesting about like the whole development of the Quake engine and all the different methods that they tried. So yeah, he wrote some books before that one about assembly language. Those really helped me. And just some other books. There's one like Tricks of the Game Programming Gurus or something that just had some of the basic stuff like how to do sound, because back then you had to basically write your own sound driver. Like, there was no drivers. So it's like you had to find the port, which, did you play any DOS games?
Oh, sure.
Back in the day?
But not very well. But please tell me more.
You remember how you'd have to put in what was the port and the IRQ of your sound card? A lot of the games.
Yeah, I never did that. I was just like typed, just letters and numbers over and over again, and eventually it would work. I never knew actually why it worked.
Yeah. It was. There was some interesting things trying to get games to run. I remember trying to get Falcon 3.0 flight simulator, and it took me a whole day to get enough memory like freed up from all the other stuff to actually get it to run. But
that was a PC game. This isn't going all the way back to Atari 800.
No, yeah, it was a PC game. It was that was on. I guess that was on. I had a 386. Like while I was in high school, and yeah.
Yeah. Man,
So,
you've been at this for so long, and you haven't given up. You've continued for 20 years at least. And
yeah.
always in the independent sphere. Or did you ever end up working, doing contract work or working on games for other people?
No, I mean, like for a long time, I was just doing kind of games as a hobby, you know. So I was going to school a little bit, and then yeah, just doing other odd jobs. And I did have one real programming job, but it wasn't in games. It was for this company doing FPGA programming. And FPGAs are basically reprogrammable chips. So, you know, it's like you can basically make anything out of it. You could make a CPU. You could make, actually, the thing I did was make a GPU on this chip as kind of like my training for that. So that was pretty interesting, learning how all that stuff works. Yeah, so I was working there, and they had like this kind of C-like language to program these. That was what the company was doing. So like we were kind of like creating like demos and stuff with that C-like language.
I can only imagine what it's like for you now, having had to basically, like, you weren't only making a house out of bricks, you were like making the bricks. You had to like learn how to like mix cement right. And now these days, kids want to develop a video game. They're just like, all right, what do we got? Unity? All right. Little drag and drop, little tug on some points there. And I got a game. I'm just running a game, a ball bouncer or something. They can make a game in a day, whereas you had to really take it from scratch. I wonder, do you think you would have been as interested in game development if you walked in on it today with so many of the pre-made tools?
Well, you could say, I mean, like even back then there was, you know, like I started with BASIC, which is pretty simple language, and it had example games. Like it had the gorillas throwing bananas back and forth, like, and then it had a snake type game. And I remember that was one of the first things I did, is I took that snake game, and it was, I think it was just one player, maybe it was two player, but I hacked into it and changed it to like 4 players. So like we had like 4 people on one keyboard all trying to press keys. And you know how keyboards still work that way, where you can only press a certain number of keys at the same time. So you could hold down keys and then prevent the other player from, you know, being able to go up or something like that.
Yeah. So taking a game that was already out there as an example and then tweaking it and making it your own thing was one of the first things you did.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not that much different, you know. There was there's this guy Sean Barrett, who does a lot of like he does these open source libraries, which are really nice. Like does one for OGG, playing like an MP3 type of thing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I was watching one of his talks, and he was talking about that. Like a lot of hardcore programmers like him, like kind of complain about, you know, the kids with their JavaScript and languages like that. And he was saying, you know, and it's true, it was like we learned on BASIC, which is a terrible language. You know, it's you know, you can't really do that much with it. But, you know, you have to learn on something, you know, simple like that. And if you're interested in the low level stuff, you can still do that. You know, it's not like these languages are preventing somebody who's learning programming now from like going into a deeper level.
Sure.
And there's, you know, I mean, there's Quake mods and stuff like that. So it wasn't like you had to write your own engine to make any type of game, even back then. So, but for me, I was always interested in doing, you know, being able to do something new. And I think to do that, you kind of have to write your own engine.
Yeah. Makes sense. It sounds like if you know, were younger, I always think about what life would be like if I were younger. Would I like love PewDiePie? Would I think memes are funny? I have no idea. But for you, you might have gotten into Game Maker or Unity or something, but it sounds like it sounds inevitable that you were going to dig deeper because you've got this urge to like use as much as you can in terms of the tools ahead of you and try to innovate.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd probably be about the same. I'm sure there's some young people now that are, doing their own engines and stuff like that. So
yeah.
It
So
takes a while though to learn all that.
well, yeah. And how has it been for you to have languages that you might have spent a long time writing, and then in a few years, it's like you wouldn't necessarily want to use them anymore because hardware has moved forward or there's been other changes around you. I can only imagine what it's like to feel like you might have to keep up. Or do you not feel like you have to? It'd be great.
No, I mean, I still use C. Like, I don't even use C++. And I've been doing that for 20 years, so I haven't changed.
That's great that it's worked.
Yeah.
Was Gish written in C? I don't know much about the back end. Gish, one of the first games you were winning awards with, you and Edmund McMillan, I believe, worked on that. When was that? When was Gish now? Was that 2007?
No, it was 2004.
Was it really? It was that long ago.
Yeah.
Good grief. Yeah. Pretty cool.
And we won the IGF in 2005. So that was kind of when people started to hear about it. Because, sales for us back then, it was like, oh, we sold 20 copies in a day. That's a good day. It was a lot different back then. So, yeah, it kind of took a while for people to find it, And right. I think we got it on Steam in around 2007. So that definitely kind of helped get it out there. And then we were in the first Humble Bundle also, which a lot of people probably played it from that.
Yeah, and Edmund is keeping Gish alive in with appearances in other games like Binding of Isaac and stuff like that, and still talks about it. Still pretty close to his heart. He had told me a while back that that was the moment he figured out that he was actually a game developer, was the IGF. Like before that, he thought he was like just a strange person who couldn't stop making stuff for no reason. And then after he met all of these other game developers at the IGF and saw that they liked what he did, he figured maybe this is actually a career, and now he's doing pretty well for himself. Was it similar for you, or did you already know that you were?
Well, I'd already been in the IGF with Pontifex.
Oh.
But yeah, the IGF was definitely back then. It was a pretty small group of indie developers back then. So being in the IGF was really cool because you actually met people that there wasn't a lot of community, like even online communities back then.
Sudden barking dog. She's all excited about online communities. She's like,
yeah.
Oh, I love the internet. Yeah. Well, yeah, 2004, 15 years ago now. That was Netscape Navigator. That was AOL. That was spending a day for an image to load. So in order to connect with other people, did you end up doing real life conversations back then in order to swap techniques and have a community with other developers, or was it pretty much just at annual events like the IGF that you got to get together with other people doing what?
There wasn't there's a few indie developers that I would talk to, like Reagan and Mayer from MetaNet. I met them, I think, in 2005 at the IGF, and I had actually gotten an email from Reagan like before that. He was a fan of Gish, and so then we met at the IGF, and so I've been friends with them for quite a while. And then there's I'm trying to think of who were the other indies back then that are still around. There's not a whole lot.
Sure, that's true. Tom Fultz.
Introversion. I met them, I guess, a couple of years later, like 2006 or 7. So I was a big fan of Darwinia and Uplink, and so they've been around for quite a while.
But you're right. The old guard, many of them have moved on to other stuff, and you don't always know where they go. You just assume you're going to hear any day now about a new game from one of these folks, and then a year goes by, another year goes by, and they just kind of drop off. They don't usually announce like, hey, I'm going to stop making video games and get a job in corporate somewhere, but they sometimes do.
Yeah. It's
but not you. You've got the capacity. You could be working for some big corporation pulling in programmer money, which is pretty good. And maybe you are doing that sometimes. I don't know. But you're definitely making a game called Hockey with a question mark at the end. Remembering that right? You made hockey, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah.
You made golf too, right?
Yep.
Remember golf, right? I'm very fuzzy today. You'll have to forgive me.
Yeah, golf was about 2004 also when we put out that demo for that.
Was it? Man, it doesn't.
Yeah.
My timeline is way off. Maybe I would like people to know who may not already know what you did when you made golf.
What do you mean? Like,
what is your golf? It's not like everybody's golf, exactly.
Oh yeah. Well, so that was an interesting one because that was around the time when we were working on Gish, and like actually when I was finishing up Gish, we were contacted by these guys from Canada that wanted to make this golf game, and they wanted us to do the physics for it because they had seen Pontifex Bridge Builder and stuff like that, and they wanted similar type of physics for that. So we started working on this game, and I was working on the physics, and the physics of golf are actually kind of tricky. Like, they're pretty complex. Like the ball hitting the club and stuff like that. It's not a simple collision where you just put in an equation and it works out.
Sure.
And then there's also the Magnus effect, which is a spinning ball actually creates lift. So like a tennis ball, you can see it very easily where like if you do top spin, it spins and moves downward. If you do back spin, it spins up.
Sure.
And so a golf ball, a lot of the distance that you get is from the Magnus effect on that, where the backspin actually helps kind of keep it in the air a lot longer than it would if it was just, kind of with no spin or.
Sure. And that's why there's all those divots in the ball, I think.
Yeah. And that helps also with the drag and the air resistance and stuff. So anyway, yeah. So we originally were just going to do the physics for it, but then they didn't really have another programmer. So we did this graphics engine, and we made this kind of demo of it, which was kind of interesting, but it was like a third person camera that you would move around and you'd move the target somewhere. And it didn't, that part of it didn't really work. So Luke, the artist that we were working with from Canada, came down to work on it, I think after we finished Gish. And I told him about this idea of like, why don't we make it a first person game, and we could make it multiplayer, so you could all be on the course and moving around. And then and so we made a prototype of that, and it seemed pretty cool. And then especially once we put it in the rocket powered golf carts, that kind of made it especially fun. So yeah, it's basically like kind of a weird golf. Like, actually, one of the original ideas was kind of like miniature golf, but on a big scale. And we kind of learned pretty quickly that just doing that doesn't really work, because like if you hit a windmill or something, like in miniature golf, it goes like 10 feet off to the side. In full-sized golf, it goes like 300 yards off course, and that's not really fun. So we had some elements that were kind of like miniature golf, but then a lot of it was kind of based on real golf. Like Luke did a lot of research into like golf courses and what makes them work, and so I think that was a big part of it. Kind of the popularity of it was that it was a pretty solid golf game, and then it had these fun aspects like the golf carts and stuff like that.
It was just called golf, right?
Yeah, it's golf with a question mark.
Yeah, like hockey with a question mark.
Yeah. We like to make things that you can't do a Google search for at all, because you can't put in golf game, right? Like you can't even. Actually, if you type in, like what I tell people is like you type in like hockey question mark, like the whole word.
Does that work?
Yeah, that'll go to in golf. Same with golf question mark, and that's what our domain is actually too. It's hockey question mark.
Huh? Good to know.
I have my theory on that. I don't know. This might be just me making stuff up, but like, I feel like that actually is better than just having like a unique name. Because like, say you're telling somebody about hockey question mark, right? Like, you have to tell them how to search for it. Whereas if it's just some name, you might just forget it. You'd be like, oh, it's whatever hockey. Yeah. And then you forget it. But like having that like extra 30 seconds of explaining how to find it, I feel like that actually makes more of an impression on somebody.
Yeah, that's a mnemonic device, I think. That's when there's when there's multiple pathways to dig out a memory. And adding more details actually gives more opportunities for pathways to dig something up properly. And having to specifically search for something in a way that you wouldn't normally use, certainly memorable, and ironically gets people questioning, well, what's different about this? As they're thinking about, they have to type the word question in order to even find it. But it also quite bold to just be like golf. Like you figured that would be enough to it like says, well, this is golf, but also lets the player know that you're not even sure that it is actually golf.
Yeah, that was actually Luke's. Well, I think the question mark might have been my idea, but he just wanted to call it golf because he was like, back in the 2600 days, like you got a game, it was just golf.
Oh, true.
It didn't have any other name
Basketball
to it,
or
tennis. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, kangaroo. Yeah. And was 2600? Is that the era of gaming that got you like where your aesthetic is today? What you feel most emotionally resonant towards? Is that what got you into games in the first place?
Yeah, that was the first games that I played, and I definitely had a lot of fun with the 2600. And like for me, even though the games were really basic, like I could see like this whole world, like the potential for a whole world in this thing, and that's what really appealed to me. Like, even playing Pitfall and stuff. Like, actually, Pitfall is still a good game. That's one of the few 2600 games that like you could still play today, and it's actually a fun game. Like, that's really well made.
I'm trying to figure out why that. I like Pitfall 2 as well, and Pitfall 2 I don't think gets enough credit for being one of the
first.
That's
an interesting game.
Points. Yeah.
I hadn't played that until I played it like on one of those multi-game pack things.
Oh, okay.
And it was pretty cool. I think the thing with Pitfall 2 though was it kind of had like a progression, right? So like it wasn't like kind of almost like as much open world as Pitfall 1, I guess. Like
it's almost like a Metroidvania before there was Metroid or Vania. There was Pitfall.
It also had music too, which was pretty impressive for a 2600 game.
I'm thinking about the music right now. It's not the best music, but I remember it to this day. I played that game for hours and hours. So it was an evolving medium then, and it sounds like you wanted to get involved with that evolution. As best you could.
I remember actually opening up the 2600 and being super disappointed that like there wasn't anything there. It's just like these chips and stuff. And I was like, where's like all the pictures and stuff? Like, I was expecting like to be able to like look at all this stuff and figure out how it works, but it's like you can't do that just from some chips.
But in a sense, you went forward to do that by figuring out what language was in those chips and rewriting it. In some cases, that takes a lot of guts to open up your video game console in like 1982, because those were like.
Well, it was broken. So we had this problem that like, like I had an Atari 800 and a 2600, but they would always break. Like after, and what it turned out, I'm pretty sure it was just power surges, because like we lived pretty far out of town, so like and we didn't really know about surge protectors back then. So I remember, like, I especially remember with the Atari 800 of like, it had like this startup thing where it would go through the RAM and check all the RAM, and it like a green rectangle would appear if it was right, and then a red one would appear if it was messed up, and like always being super disappointed. Like we'd go to Toys R Us, get a new one, bring it back, and then like a couple days later, like the RAM would be messed up, and we'd have to go back. And the nearest Toys R Us was like 2 hours away, so it was like we didn't really go there. We went there like once a month or something.
And would they give you a new one free of charge when you were like, red triangle again, guys, or did you have to?
Yeah, we did that like 3 or 4 times. And then my parents were just like, enough of this. We don't want to deal with this anymore.
Yeah, it was this personal computer age, even, where saying to an adult, like, I want a computer. Today, that would be like if a kid saying, like, I want a rocket powered unicycle. It's like, I kind of know what that is, but it's not like everybody has one.
Yeah.
Do with that.
And also, you had to hook it up to the TV. Like, we only had one TV. So that was like our main TV. I remember, I think my brother might have borrowed a computer from one of his friends. I remember playing Ultima 4, me watching my brother. My brother's like 4 years older than me. So I remember, like, we would come home from school and like play that for like 2 or 3 hours or however long until my parents wanted to watch TV. Then we'd have to like switch it over to like normal TV. But
I found a way. You may know this already, but I can't remember how I did it with my Commodore 64, which also had to be hooked up to a TV. I found a way to like hack it so I could play my Commodore 64 on the TV in my room, even though it was hooked up to the family TV. I found a way to broadcast Commodore 64 signal on channel 3 on the other TV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I should. Jeez, I feel smart all of a sudden. I'll have to figure out how to do that and like share my notes with you later. I still have a Commodore 64 laying around somewhere. Pretty fun.
Yeah, I never had one of those. I always wanted one though.
Yeah, please.
My grandma had a VIC-20, and I remember we borrowed that for a while, and I actually made some games on that, like really simple games, but yeah, never had a Commodore 64.
VIC-20 predated the Commodore 64 and ran on magnetic tape. Like kids today don't even know like what an audio cassette is, let alone audio. Well, not an audio, but a tape for computers. But
yeah.
And your grandma, what was she doing with a VIC-20?
She wanted us to learn typing from it, which was she thought that was a valuable skill, and yeah, back then it was. So but yeah, like I didn't really care about the typing too much. I think I did some of it just to make her happy, but then spent most of my time playing games.
Yeah. Tapper and stuff like that was up there.
Yeah, I remember my brother talking about with the Commodore 64, like, at his friend's house, and like they would put in the cassette and then go play basketball for like a half an hour because it took like forever for it to load up. Like, yeah, the kids these days complaining about load times, like try a half an hour to play some really simple game too.
And complain about price. I'm always shocked when kids are like, well, this $3 game only lasted for 8 hours. What a ripoff. I could have played where I used to pay like $60 for Impossible Mission, where I would just be on the same screen every day because I could never beat it. And that was like essentially the game for me. So yeah, I'm happy for kids today having it better. I'm glad I have it better now too. But it's certainly, I appreciate the fact that I have a little history so I can know how much better things are now today, which brings me to when you're pricing your own games, how do you even think about it? What do you factor in when you're deciding how much to charge for something like Skate or Don't, for instance?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really think about that too much. Like for me, like some indies like want to like have higher prices. I don't really like. For me, it's I want the most amount of people to be able to play the game as possible. Mm-hmm. And I can totally understand like people that live in other countries can't afford even a $20 game is a lot to them,
Sure.
So I can understand that too. So yeah, I think just whatever's can get the most amount of people playing it while me still being able to eat and pay rent.
Sure. And there's this thing. It's not the most super interesting thing, so I won't belabor. But a lot of developers have told me, well, if I charge 99 cents for my game, people will assume it's one of those games that you're never going to have fun with. But if I charge $5 for it, people assume it's a good game. And if I made a good game and make good on that assumption, then everybody wins. I've actually heard from a few people cheaper games end up not finding their audience in the same way because people assume they're lower quality.
Yeah, I can see that argument too. Well, like the EP, with Skater Don't and all that. Like, I think I still have the Humble widget up. That's like $3, which is probably too cheap. I don't know. Like, I still haven't got it on Steam yet because I just haven't had time to do that. I want to polish up some of the stuff, especially like the menus and stuff, like make those look a little bit better.
For people who don't know, what's on the Cryptic Sea EP?
So there's Skater Don't, which is started off as a multiplayer, like a local multiplayer game where basically it's physics-based skateboarding with kind of these stick figure characters, and you can theoretically play 16 players on one computer, although Windows does not work with that many gamepads. Like, I tried to even get eight gamepads working, and the exact same gamepad would not work. Like, I get like 5 or 6 of them working, and then the 7th and 8th, like the driver just wouldn't be able to handle it. And like,
that's such a great tagline. Your driver probably can't even handle it.
Yeah.
Skater Don't.
Windows can't handle this. So anyway, yeah. So it's a local multiplayer game where you just try to get the farthest without crashing, and then there's also a single player story that I've added in, which is kind of like old school, like lives based system. So you get 5 lives, and there's only 6 levels. And because that's one of the things I've been thinking about lately is kind of the difficulty of games. And I feel like modern games are actually way harder on a per level basis than even like Ghosts and Goblins. Like Ghosts and Goblins, like level 3 is really hard, right? But that's because you get there with like 1 life left, and and you have that pressure of like, oh, I'm on my last life. But if you just played that over and over, you could probably beat it, maybe 10% of the time. But games like, like M++ or something like that, those, like some of those levels, I can maybe beat them 1% of the time. And some of them not even that. Like, I've got to some of the levels in that like, I don't think I'm ever going to beat. But so yeah, like, and I kind of like also that kind of the pressure of the last life situation where it's like, maybe this level like is not super hard, but you have that added pressure. So that was one of the things I wanted to go for that. And also with that too is the scoring system. Scoring systems work a lot better if you have a live system, because you're not just replaying the same level over and over to get the highest score. It's like you're doing a whole run. And so that was one of the things I wanted to do with that game, was have like a legitimate high score thing where basically like combining all this run into one point system basically kind of makes it interesting. So
yeah,
so I still play it.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I still play it all the time. Skater Don't. Like I'm sure I have the highest score in the world, which is like over 40,000.
One of the things I like about it is when you want points, but you almost always have to risk really wiping out hard if you want those points. So you're weighing like, is it worth the risk? It reminds me, I don't know if you ever played the old BMX part of California games?
Yeah, so I remember you told me about that.
Oh, did I?
Because
Totally don't remember that. Yeah.
I sent you the early build that was just like the multiplayer thing. So like you could play it single player, but it was just kind of trying to make it as far as you can. And I remember you sent me an email talking about the BMX part of California games and how you really liked the scoring system in that. And so that was one of the things that inspired me to put in the like you get points for doing back flips or front flips. And one of my favorite things to do in Skate or Don't is the front flip, which is the hardest one to do because and this is without jumping, right? So it's not an ollie, it's just like going off a ramp.
Yeah.
And you have to like lean back and then lean forward at the right time just to create that rotation. And there's this one spot where you can do a triple front flip, but it's super hard to do. And so I made the front flips worth more points than the back flips, and then you get like it's a multiplier for each flip that you do too. So like doing a long like double front flip is worth a ton of points.
Yeah, it's so scary and exciting. And,
Yeah.
If you die though, you sacrifice a life, but you get to go on as long as you didn't try too many risky moves before that. So I really like the risk reward you set up for a genre that's usually all about just like showing off with tricks and not asking as much of the player. In my opinion, anyway, most skateboarding games, they don't seem like they respect their audience enough to like really freak them out hard and be like, if you screw up, there's going to be consequences to this. But
Exactly.
Or don't. You also, why did you? I never asked you. Why is it called Skate or Don't? Because you kind of do have to skate, I think.
Oh, well, that's just a joke that it's skate or die, right? Like, that was I actually did that at one of the TIG jams.
Oh, okay.
So I had made this prototype before of a physics-based skateboarding game, and then I was showing that to some people, and like I was like, oh yeah, that's because I think I was telling people like I have like 20 prototypes like of games that are actually pretty fun games, and so I was showing them a bunch of them, and like people like the skateboarding one. I was thinking this would make a really good local multiplayer game. And so I put together the first version of that, and then I'm driving back with Ian Stalker. Do you know him?
I know the name, but
yeah,
I've never met him.
Scapegoat, and he's working on Soulcaster right now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, like he thought that was hilarious. The Skate or Don't, So I don't know. Like I might put something in the story or something. I was thinking like I don't know some reason, but yeah, it's just a joke off of Skate or Die because
Yeah, it works. It's anti-extreme. Like Skate or Die.
Exactly.
Like, oh my god, I love this so much. I do it even if it kills me. And with your game, it's like, or maybe I'll just quit.
Yeah, or don't.
Consoles. Will it ever happen? I always think when I think Alex Austin, I think these are games that on consoles would potentially blow up. I think Skate or Don't came before Roll 7's Ollie Ollie, if I remember correctly. I don't know if you played Ollie Ollie. A neat game, like it a lot. Skate or Don't controls very differently, has different appeal. It's the multiplayer, of course. But Ollie Ollie did super well on consoles. Skate or Don't, not yet on consoles. Do you think that'll ever happen?
I'd like to get the whole EP on consoles because I think those games could all work really well. But that's a whole different thing. Like I don't have the time to do that.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to something I was hoping to ask you about in general, which is your feeling towards collaboration. Like, you're Alex Austin. You've been doing this forever. Like, you've made games that have influenced many of the people I know who have gone on, Mayor and Reagan and a list of successful developers a mile long. I'm sure there are people who'd be like, yeah, I'd love to work with you on consoles with that, but I don't know if there's a reason why that connection has yet to happen, or whether you hope it happens, or whether you would rather not it happen. So when it comes to working with other people, it seems like you're doing more solo stuff these days. You did the art on Skate or Don't?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to call it that.
and on Sub Rosa as well, which I think looks great.
Yeah.
It's clearly minimalist in terms of the way you approach the look. So has been collaborating. Has that been something you've been doing less of for a reason, or is that just not fallen into place in the same way as it used to?
No, I definitely would like to collaborate with people. A lot of times the hard part is like people I'd like to work with are already doing their own things, so it's hard to find the time when you can match up where like they have some free time and, I have something to work with them on. Sure. But actually, Sub Rosa, I'm working with this artist for the last month, and she's been doing some really cool models and stuff, like low poly. So in the same style as it is now, but a lot nicer. And the other thing too is right now it's all procedurally generated, so it takes forever for me to do like even basic stuff. Like for a long time, the human model was like the same one that I had done in the very first version, which was just like by extruding out quads and stuff like that. I was actually streaming it at the time, and I wish, and it was on Twitch, but you know how like Twitch, if you don't save the archive in like a week, it goes away.
Sure.
Because there's actually a pretty good video of like the development of the human model, because like you'd see like starts with a box and then like extrudes out the torso and then like extrudes out the arm, but the arm's like giant because it hasn't scaled it back. And so anyway, like it took a long time to do even those really basic models. And so doing stuff like different clothing and hairstyles and stuff like that, if I was procedurally generating all that stuff, it would just not be possible to do that. So having an artist that can do, a lot of different variety on that's going to be really nice, and going to create a lot more possibilities for gameplay also.
Interesting. So Sub Rosa is built in C?
Yeah.
So how does that? You'll have to forgive my ignorance. Well, you won't have to. You can secretly think, you ignorant son of a bitch. But at least for purposes of moving the conversation forward, to forgive temporarily. How would you procedurally generate polygon-based models using C? How do you do that?
You type in some code.
And the artist who you're working with can type in the code? Like how?
Oh no, she's doing them in Blender, and so I'm gonna be importing them. And it's not all gonna be procedure generated, and also the buildings too. I was originally gonna procedurally generate the whole city, but that just got to the point where it's like I'm doing. Have you done much programming at all? Like
I got Smile Basic, which is like I thought it was going to be a cute, easier basic for the 3DS. As that's the only time when I'm falling asleep at night, I'll bring a handheld with me to like kind of wind down and enter dream world through video games and stuff. So I thought, as I'm like going to sleep, I'll try to do basic on the 3DS, and wow, no. I cannot do a dang thing on that. It's a pretty tough language in my opinion. So other than that, I don't have much experience. But a lot of the people who watch the show do. So you don't have to worry too much about understanding. And I think I can keep up. So please, yes.
Basically, I was doing all the buildings with for loops and which are like go from this point to this point, and you do that 3-dimensionally, and it makes a box, right? And then, but then to make like to make a different shaped building, you got to do a bunch of ifs, and it just got to the point where it's like I'm doing all this code for like something that I could probably make an editor and just build it with the editor in like 1/10 of the time. So that's what I've been working on the last a couple of years on the engine, is making this system where I can make a bunch of different types of buildings. And it's actually I kind of call it procedurally assisted content, because like it still uses a lot of the procedural generation ideas, you know, so like you don't have to make every polygon in the editor. You just you say there's a wall here, there's this type of window here, put this type of texture on it, and it generates like the building off of that, kind of like floor plan almost.
So it has some guidelines that it knows not to break, but other than that, it can do a lot of it on its own.
And the cool thing with the engine is that you can have a whole city and you can go in every single building, and the buildings can be filled with objects and things like that. You know, there's some limitations to that, like they have to be in kind of aligned in a grid. But most cities are pretty grid based. Most buildings are pretty grid based also. So,
and as a player, if it weren't, it might get even more confusing. So to have it be like, okay, I can predict when the next building is going to show up based on, I mean, I think most even Grand Theft Auto games stick to the grid for the most part with a few changes. So that's what people are going to be used to. And we didn't even explain to the folks what Sub Rosa is. So now we know a little bit more about how it was built, but what is Sub Rosa? Sell it on those people to make them.
Yeah. So yeah, well, the basic idea, the basic concept that I actually originally did this for the 7-day FPS game jam, and the original idea was I'd seen this this video from this group called Shack Tech that plays Arma. Back then it was Arma 2, and they get a big group of people together, like 60, 100 people, all doing like one mission or like sometimes adversarial. Anyway, they had this mission that somebody had designed that was 3 teams, and there's one team that has like these captured pilots, and then there's another team that wants to trade this ammo truck for the pilots, and then there's the third team that wants the pilots, but they don't have anything, but they have a helicopter to kind of fly around and try and figure out where the whole thing's going down. So like I just really like that idea of like, you know, these 2 teams are meeting up and they're doing this trade, but they don't know if the other team's gonna actually do the trade or if they're gonna try and shoot them. And then having this third team that kind of creates this time pressure, and you know, like when is the third team going to show up? So so that was the basic inspiration for it. And so I realized that like I wasn't going to be able to do hostages, you know, actual players like this mission was, because you know, this is a group that like all knows each other, so they're not going to cheat and say like, I'm over here, come pick me up. But if you have like a normal multiplayer game, people are going to cheat as much as they possibly can. So instead of having players as like the kind of the goal, I, you know, made it originally, I think it was documents, but it's a disk basically. So the basic concept is one team has a disk, another team has money to trade for the disk, and then the third team doesn't have anything, but they want the disk. So, you know, they're going to come in shooting if they can find out where they're meeting. And it's set in a city, so you have cars, so you can drive to different parking garages. Was the original like kind of meeting point. And when the teams meet, they don't know if the other team's going to betray them or if they're going to do a clean deal. So I remember one of the cool moments, and this was the original demo, and this was kind of round based. One of the coolest ones with that is I remember I was on a team, and I think it was just me and another guy, and the other teams had like 6 or 7 players on it. So, and we had the disc, and we knew like if we met with the other team that had the money, they're just going to shoot us and take the stuff because they have us way outnumbered. So we told them to meet us at this parking garage. And then we told the other team that they're going to be there. So those 2 teams both met up and shot each other and like basically killed almost every one of the other team. And then we just came in and shot them and took the money.
So it's procedurally generating a narrative as well based on the decisions you make and how you're going to in real time potentially con other players or collaborate with other players. Honestly,
Yeah.
it takes some of the thinking in there's a lot of modern card games these days. I think Resistance is the name of one of them, where
Yeah.
you're looking around and like, who can I trust, who's bluffing, who like isn't honest enough, or I mean, who is not a good enough actor to convince me. And that is just as important as like the moment to moment action decisions you make. It combines those two in a way I don't think has been done before. I'm trying to think of one, a game that's done this. I can't think of one because the amount of respect I think you have for the player, that they're going to like not have it just be about who can do the most headshots, but in fact who can like do the best con as well. That you believe players are going to want to get involved in that.
Yeah, I think, and yeah, like a lot of players when they first join, like their players would just shoot their teammates or not really know what's going on, because like people aren't used to like seeing another player or another team and not just shooting them immediately. But yeah, people learn. You know, I think that's the thing. You know, like DayZ, I think was kind of one of the first games to do that, of like kind of respecting the player and letting them, giving them freedom, and not just saying, here's what you do, you know, not constantly giving them a mission, go kill these 3 rats or whatever. It's like, no, just drop them in drop them in a zombie infested island and you know, see what happens.
And what often happens in DayZ is people are just really awful to each other, but you've set up something where there's a reward potentially for playing it safe.
Yeah, so that's one of the main things. I think one of the cool things about Sub Rosa is yeah, DayZ, I think, like, it started off as kind of a really interesting world, but then I think once you've mastered survival in that game, what else, there's not much else to do besides either kill other players or kill the people killing other players. You know, it's like, which, you know, some people are into that. But for me, like, I think the potential with Sub Rosa, and this is why the newer versions has a more open world mode. So so there's not just 3 teams, there's up to 5 teams right now. And you can go join a team and or create your own team, or, you know, eventually there'll be more things to do besides even just the teams. But having a city that that is kind of a living city, you know, like I want to have AI. There is some AI traffic and stuff like that, but just having more things to do. Like, you can, right now you can buy cars, and then you can also buy a helicopter if you get enough money. So just having goals for people, like, of earning this money, you know, like having things to spend it on. And that's one of the cool things about, you know, working with the artists now, is that we'll be able to do a lot more things to spend your money on. Because right now, it's a little bit too easy to make money, so players have like billions of dollars, and there's not really much to spend it on. But yeah, like having that open world, but also having more goals than just like survival. I think there's a lot of potential in that.
Yeah. It's, I would imagine, when people are wanting to get together and form a Sub Rosa team, if someone's a really good strategist, or even like really socially manipulative, or has those kinds of strengths in terms of their thinking, even if they're not the best at pulling off headshots or whatever, you may want to get one of those people on your team, because you can't just get by on skill, you know, aiming.
Yeah, exactly. And even the shooting, right now it's not quite balanced where I want it, but it's the gun is all physics based, and the arms are physics based. So you can't instantly turn around 180 and shoot somebody, because the gun has to actually physically move to that point. And that's one of the things I've intentionally done, is like, I want the shooting and the reloading. I don't know if you played
the latest version, but I haven't played. No.
Okay. So to reload, you basically have 2 hands. You have to press like Shift R to unload the current magazine, then Shift tilde to drop that, then Shift 2 or 3 or wherever the magazine is, put it in your left hand and then Shift R again to load it. And so like a lot of people, when I first put this in, people were like, "This sucks. I hate this." But people kind of learned it and understood that like this makes like firefights pretty chaotic. You know, it's not, you don't just press R, or, you know, you don't have these magazines that magically turn into like a full mag. You know, like most games you shoot like 20 bullets out of a magazine, has 10 left, and then you press R, like those 10 bullets somehow magically like pool together and fill up, you know, all the magazines to the max. Sure. Right. So you don't have that. You have to, like, if you take out a half empty magazine, when you put that back in, it's still half empty. So by making the shooting kind of more realistic in a way, like that was kind of one of the intentional things of like kind of slowing it down. Well, maybe not slowing it down, but yeah, making it so it's there. A player can't like take out 10 of the other team just with headshots, you know?
Sure. And they have to, you're allowing players to, like, you may want a guy on your team because he's just super good at reloading. Like, he's good at dialing in the reload faster than the other guy. So they're all these different points of potential interaction with the game allow for players, not only for it to feel more real, like you mentioned, but also to have something to aspire to be better at. And
there's some players that are just good drivers, you know. Yeah. And that's one of the things I want to encourage is like even having it so people could be freelancers, like they could just be a driver, and like a team needs a really good driver. Like, have you seen the movie Drive?
I haven't seen it yet. I want to. Okay. Everyone tells me it's good. He's got a cool jacket, and he frowns a lot, or he tries not to show his feelings. So it's probably good. What's his name? Yeah. Ryan Gosling. He's a handsome man. Sorry, way off on a tangent. How does Drive relate to Sub Rosa, because he's such a good driver?
Well, in the movie, he's basically that. He's like a kind of a contract driver for these, you know, criminals or whoever needs a driver. And so it has some really good kind of driving scenes. And like, that's one of the roles that I'd like players to be able to do is like, this team needs a really good driver. This guy on the server has a really good reputation as being a real, you know, as being a driver. And so they, you know, maybe they hire him to do a job. And then, yeah, different roles, like you're saying, like just being a negotiator, like a player could not even know how to shoot the gun in the game and still like be, you know, useful to the team if they, you know, can just talk on the phone and talk to the other teams and work out deals and stuff.
That's what I want to do, for sure. I can't shoot a gun to save my life. Maybe talk somebody into a bad idea, like I talked you into being on the show. Will the teams be able to divvy up how much money they like? If you value somebody's skill set more than somebody else's, will you be able to make kind of a budget for your team?
So that's a tricky one. So at one point, one of the versions I put out, you would just get the cash and then you'd have to divide it up manually and then deposit it in your account. And I kind of like that, but it also was a pretty long process, especially when you got like $100,000. And like, I don't think I had thousands at that point. So it was all like hundreds, and splitting that up, you know, with like 5 players and stuff, it took a while. So hopefully I'll be able to have a better interface for kind of like handling the money, like, and then also there's no, there aren't any tables. So you're just like dropping it on the floor. So now it automatically splits it. So like, it divides the reward for completing a mission evenly amongst the teammates. And then but you can also buy stocks in the company. So part of the thing with that is, like if you have a player, like say you have a player just starting off and they have $1,000, and you have a player that has $1 million. If you have just like a flat rate mission, like a reward for completing the mission, like $2,000, to the new player, that's that's a ton of money, but to the guy who's got $1 million, that's not, not even really worth it for them to do the mission. So the stock system works where if you complete the mission successfully, the stock price of the company goes up. So that player with $1 million could invest 900,000 of that in the company, and then when they complete the mission, they might make $100,000, from the stock price going up.
So you may end up wanting some people. They wouldn't need to formally be on your team, but you may just talk to people about like, which team do you think I should invest in right now? Like who's doing good?
So right now you have to be on the team, and you can only buy stocks in the team that you're on.
Mm-hmm.
But in the next version, I'm going to open that up where you can invest in any company, because there's so much. Yeah, there's tons of cool potential for that. Like a player could just be a stock trader, right? And like they could have kind of almost like informants on the different teams. Like, are you guys going to successfully do this mission? Should I buy your stocks or should I sell them? Or, so yeah, like I love stuff like that. And then like there's tons of potential for like really big betrayals too. Cause like a player could like secretly sell all their stock in their own company, buy stock in the other team, and then like betray them on a big mission, and
Yeah, it's I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's kind of neat. Some people hate it, but some people like it. So many video games before were just about the base level, which I think is like safety, like not getting murdered by a plant or a turtle or whatever. And above that is like getting shelter and food or coins in the case of Mario, just like acquiring stuff that you can use to live later, like lives, coins, so you can stay alive. But above that is like where you fit in a larger world socially. You see this in The Walking Dead, actually. I don't know if you watched that show. They're slowly like building it up, the hierarchy. So it's not just about them surviving anymore. It's like where they exist in a larger social structure amongst other groups and whatnot. And I think a lot of people who have gotten into video games from Minecraft and games like that, they didn't really care about the survival stuff that much. It's underneath it, but they care about games as a social lubricant and a place to be with other people and fit into a larger social structure. And you're right there. You're making a game that's like perfect for what so many people who were brought up on a completely different generation of games than you and I. This is the exact kind of game they want. I just hope it comes out at just the right time and like blows up and makes all the money for you, because geez, you certainly deserve it. You've put the hours in. Video games, that's for sure.
Definitely done that.
What is the launch plan for like the official, like the game is done, time to buy it for X amount of dollars, Sub Rosa? What's going to happen?
Well, we're going to do Steam Early Access first, and I'm not sure. I don't know. It's probably a couple months away at least.
That's pretty soon, though. I mean, how long have you been working on it for?
I've probably said that. Probably would have said a couple months ago. I've been working on it like 3.5 years, I guess.
Good grief, that is some time. Yeah.
But
you feel like it's nearing that at this point. You feel like it's nearing completion.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm working with Devolver on this, and so I talked with Nigel about this quite a bit, like. Kind of like level of polish that it needs, and all that for early access. And like my feeling is like the level of polish isn't that important. Like, I would like to fix it up a little bit more, like the interface and stuff is super basic, but for me, like the main thing that I want to have in is like having it so that it's not super confusing for players initially, right? Like right now, when you join in, you start outside the city, you have to wait for this train to come by, get on the train, take it into town. You have to buy a car because, you don't have any other way of getting around right now. And then you got to go join a team. And so there's just a lot of things that there's like 30 things that you have to learn how to do before you can even really play the game. So, So, well, one of the things I want to have is like some training missions. So like players can, with AI that they can kind of learn how the game works, and even having one with like doing a deal where you're trading. So like people can kind of learn that like sometimes you just trade with other teams. You don't have, you're not necessarily shooting. And but I'd like to have that, kind of randomly. Sometimes it randomly goes bad and the other team shoots, and so then you do have to do some shooting. But so anyway, yeah, having some kind of better training and having it easier for people to kind of learn how it works, I think it would be pretty important for the Steam early access version. And then also, well, so one of the problems with doing your own engine is you have to deal with video card drivers, which are the worst. Like,
it's because you can't predict how they're going to, unless you have every video card driver and test it. Yeah, it's hard to know how it's going.
I mean, I get emails from people like, why doesn't this work on my computer, or why does it run slow? And it's like, I want to tell them, email AMD or NVIDIA or Intel. It's like they know, I don't know. Like it works fine on mine. I have, well, actually I got a new laptop, so I can test out on with some of the newer stuff, because like my other laptop's like almost like 5 years old, I think. And so there are some issues with that. Like I always like try to develop on an old computer, because like, that was what I used to think, is like, if it runs fine on mine, it should run really well on a newer card.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some issues that I had last year with Sub Rosa where it would run slower on like a brand new NVIDIA card than on my 5-year-old laptop. And it's like, and it was just these driver changes that they did, and mine's so old it doesn't even have the new drivers. So, like,
so it may be, we can guess, and you would know, of course, much more about this, but a newer driver may not have all of the old components of an older driver if it thought they were obsolete, or nobody uses that anymore, or
yeah, it was kind of, well, like you were saying earlier with languages. It's not really that I have to change languages, but definitely with OpenGL, which is the graphics library that I use,
mm-hmm.
That has changed a lot, where like stuff that I did before that ran fine, like just doesn't run fine anymore. So like I have to change how some of the stuff works. And so I spent a couple months last year optimizing that stuff, and it seems to be a lot better. I mean, there's still tons of optimizations I can do, but part of that is like, I don't want to do optimizations for stuff that's going to change anyway, right? Like a lot of the engine is still kind of in progress, and I don't want to spend a lot of time optimizing that and then just rewriting it anyway, right? So
all by yourself. This is all by you.
Yeah.
Oh, good grief! I can only imagine. Has it gotten to the point for you where programming is just like, you have the confidence you're going to get there when you've got a mountain of stuff to untangle or stuff yet to be written? You're like, I've been doing this for a while, I'm sure I'll be able to pull it off eventually. Or do you ever think, I can't do this, and just want to give up?
No, I mean, for most stuff, like, I have plenty of confidence, I guess. Like, I don't think like that was never an issue for me. Like that, like I was saying, like 20 years ago, I was trying to make an FPS, and like I was like, I can do that. Like, even though I'd only been really programming for like a year and a half, it was like, I'll make Quake. Like, why not?
But I have to guess that's one of the keys to why you've been so successful. Folks who are willing to leap before they look and just assume, I'm going to land fine, I'm going to be able to make the thing.
Yeah.
And then they have to.
I think.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, I think it's good to have your confidence a little bit, a certain amount higher than where you're actually at. Like. Huh. You don't want to be too overconfident, because then like you're never going to make it anywhere, because
sure
you're probably just going to get frustrated that you're actually not as good as you thought you were. And then you definitely don't want to be under where your skill level is, because then you're going to underestimate yourself, and you're not going to try things that maybe you could do, but you didn't think you could do. So yeah, I definitely think it's good to believe that you can do stuff, because sometimes that's what it takes. One good example of and this is the hardest programming thing I've ever done, is I'm working on walking physics. So and running physics. I don't know. Have you seen any of the videos or GIFs of that stuff?
Of your walking physics?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Well, what happens in them?
Well, basically, what I'm trying to do is make an FPS where the character is fully physical, right? So, because in games right now, the character, there's a model for the character, right? And it has all these animations and stuff, but your actual movement is basically just a capsule, and that just kind of glides over the ground. And then, and you can turn instantly, right? That's why you can, in most games, you can shoot somebody behind you in a millisecond, because you can turn around instantly in one frame and shoot. And, it fires exactly where you're looking. So, so I wanted to do, and this is actually something I want to do for a long time. Even back when I was making that original FPS, I never really got anywhere on that, but I wanted it so you could do rolls, dive through a window or roll, and which you can't really do. I guess you can kind of do that in Mirror's Edge, but I think that's more of you're pressing a button, right, to do a roll.
And the camera just does a set move.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like an animation, but with this, you can actually physically do that. So I have a prototype of it that kind of works. And yeah, so to dive through a window or just to do a roll, you lean back and lean forward and jump, and that rotational momentum will actually kind of spin you, and you can do that.
Wow.
And
I'm picturing how that may lead to so many unpredictable situations for players who I'm hoping there's a way to make it advantageous. While you're in midst roll, you take less damage or something like that. So people will be motivated to try to do it.
Well, it's no, I think it actually works out. It would be the same as why would you dive through a window in real life? It's say somebody drops a grenade and you have to get out of that building or something, right?
Yeah.
So, and one of the things that I think is really interesting with it is I have AI. So, I've been playing it sometimes, and and actually I had some people test. I had Brendan from Blendo Games. I had him test it out. And I think one of the really interesting things is I watch people, and I do the same thing. You see an enemy off to your side. In most games, I feel you just turn and shoot them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in this, you actually try to find cover, because you know that you can't turn and shoot them that quickly, because it's just not physically possible.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to shoot you before you shoot them. So it makes you feel more vulnerable. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of it, is that, yeah, most FPS games, your initial reaction is if you see somebody to attack them or shoot them.
Sure.
But with this, you actually have to think defensively, and you have to think about your physical body, right? It really changes it. And I think, so I've been working on this for about 5 years and not full time, because I would go insane. Although I have been working on it the last couple of weeks and going insane. But it's just there's so many variables and so many different methods to try.
Wow. It's what so many people who are burnt out on simply experiencing first-person shooter thinking, how can I kill somebody before they kill me? It's almost all quick draw competitions.
Yeah.
The game you're making really forces people to do what I think is most exciting about getting into first-person shooters for when you first get into them. It's like, I'm mortal. I'm this person. And I can really die. I can super just get shot from a distance. How am I going to overcome the fear of my own death in order to go forward and do something worthwhile? You're making people have to be afraid of so many different things. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you put in a mechanic where people can just like trip and face plant and break their nose, and then like, oh, now there's blood all over the place. I'm slipping in my own blood and trying to reload my gun with like 3 different combinations of controls, and then you're giving people so many interesting problems. And
exactly. So so I'm gonna put some of this in Sub Rosa, like some of it's for another game that I've been working on for forever, A New Zero, which started off as just like a vehicle combat simulation, but then I wanted to put in infantry. But since the whole game was kind of like, the whole concept was like everything's physics based, I wanted to have the infantry physics based also. So I actually originally thought about just making them like these cylinders, because that's what they are in most games. But I don't know, I didn't think that was, shooting a cylinder isn't very interesting.
Sure.
So anyway, like I started off, and originally, it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I'll just do the upper body stuff, for the legs, I'll just fake it, and do kind of a raycast thing that most games do. And so I did that. And then it was like, well, maybe I'll try doing like some really simplified, legs, because it doesn't really feel that good when you're just kind of gliding over the ground, even though the upper body was, like had physics to it. So the gun would move around if you swung around. And so, I worked on the legs and the feet and all that. And it was just one of those things where every time I try to fake it, it just wasn't, it was kind of worse than just doing a raycast. So, it just I kept getting deeper and deeper into this thing where it's like, okay, well, I'll just do the legs, but I'll still have this thing on the waist that kind of auto balances it, so I don't have to worry about balancing. And then there's things with that I wasn't really satisfied with. So, but actually, Sub Rosa right now is it does have, the whole upper body is physically modeled, and then the lower body is it is like a raycast thing, but you can do flips and stuff. And it's funny in Sub Rosa, I mean, I'll see some people just like, that's all they're doing for like half an hour is just flipping around.
Well, when you give people that many points to connect with your game, they may find something that they had no idea they would be fascinated with. That's the most fun part for them. It's similar to when you ask somebody like, do you want to make a game? And it's almost exactly what you're doing. You're finding yourself being fascinated for whatever reason with just like making leg physics right.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, I'll think about the other stuff later. Right now it's about making knees and ankles work together for days. Just thinking about that.
Yeah. Well, and so that's another potential thing in Sub Rosa is like, maybe people just do parkour and stuff. It's like, especially once there's more buildings and things like that, that could be a thing that people just do that,
I wonder if there'd be a way to,
as long as it's fun to do,
Yeah. And if people feel like, because I'm wondering if you're concerned about making sure people know what will be fun to even try to start doing. Whether you feel like you need to give them more carrots at the end of the stick, so they'll even pursue these things. It will end up being fun and just learning how to do it when they start. But they may only think, well, I know shooting, so that's why I think it's genius that you've made shooting not the easiest thing to do, because people might assume, well, this is a shooting game, so I'm just going to focus on being the best shot. By putting all those roadblocks there, they're going to have to think about what else could they potentially do. But I'd love it if there was just like the ability to go in a city square and just be like, hey guys, gonna parkour, and like jump on a fire hydrant and stuff like that, and then people just throw money at you. Like, oh, great tricks, almost like how Skate or Don't rewards you for just doing tricks. I don't know where the points come from, but somebody decided you did a great trick, so they gave you some reward. That would be a lot of fun. I would probably end up just parkouring all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I think just having stuff like that. Yeah, that's one of the main things. Like, I don't really worry about players about giving them carrots for that stuff. Like, I think if you make it fun enough, it's kind of its own reward. So, you know, and especially since it's multiplayer, people will discover these things. Like, even if they don't initially know that you can do stuff like that, they'll find it by seeing other players or stuff like that. So.
Sure. I imagine the potential for the streaming community to take to this game, where people just want to see what other people are going to come up with, see the narrative that was created by the player unfold.
Yeah.
The potential there is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've given this some thought. You didn't invest all these years in it if you didn't. But that's something else I wanted to ask. Like, one of the unusual things about you that you may just take for granted is, like, a lot of people would be thinking, well, I'm just gonna have the legs move automatically because I need to, like, make money soon, and I'm not gonna spend like weeks on the legs because who cares about legs? I'm kind of in this for the money. Like, I love making video games, but every little aspect of it I may not love. I may not love the minutia of the stuff that you seem to, for better or worse, for your own financial advancement, you get fascinated with stuff and stuck in it. It doesn't seem like you're in it for the payout at the end. It seems like you're in it for the love of it.
Yeah, I mean, payout would be nice. Like, definitely. Like, the Gish money doesn't really cut it anymore.
Sure.
But, so yeah, I mean, like, I'm pretty bad. Like, I think I could use a producer. Like, I've talked to other indies about this, and like, I think a lot of other indies think of, like, you know, they probably worked in AAA, and like, they think of the producer as the person that's just like kind of telling them what to do, or, you know, things like that. But I think an indie game producer could be really valuable, but it would have to be somebody who probably made their own games, so like they know, you know, what goes into it, and more of like a guide.
Oh, did you freeze? He looks frozen. I thought
telling people what to do, you know.
Oh no. Sure. All right.
The following program was made.
Buttons. We've all got them. Well, we lost Alex. Ironically, as he was talking about finances, I hope he didn't like suddenly run out of internet because he didn't pay his bill here on the end of February. Probably not. That probably wasn't it. Alex Austin, heck of a guest. So happy to have had him on the show. Could have talked to him forever. Flew by. You should follow his stuff. He's at Sub Rosa Game. I believe that's the Twitter handle. Yeah, he's got that too. He's got that. Oh yes, Sorry, that was Sinistar secretly whispering in my ear. He's also at Cryptic C on Twitter. I'm pretty sure he's at Sub Rosa. I'm typing it in. Yep, Sub Rosa Game, one word, to follow what's going to happen with him. Devolver is publishing, it sounds like, so you can follow Devolver for all sorts of good video game things anyway, and they'll be talking about Sub Rosa when the time comes. As for me, I'm at Tronauts on Twitter. You can follow me there for more things about this stuff and other stuff. You can watch this show later, youtube.com/SubHolmesShow, one word, and listen to it on Libsyn and iTunes. And I guess that's it. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.